Got
Recording in
it.
progress. So it's recording. Do I have to do that like?
No, don't do that. Thank you so much for coming on. Honestly, I'm so stoked. I have some questions for you about what it was like being a Christian. I guess my first one would be, do you remember when you became a Christian? Like, do you have a memory of asking Jesus into your heart?
Oh man, dude, that's a difficult question right off the bat. So
Yeah.
I come from a family of three older brothers, and none of us to this day are religious, but we were born to parents that started off as Catholics, and they were pretty dissatisfied with that religion, so they went off and started following the Worldwide Church of God, which I think has been denounced as a cult. But they were kind of closer to like Judaism. And by the time that I was born, they were pretty burnt out on their own religion, I feel, because my family didn't celebrate like Christmas or Halloween, which isn't like super weird for some religious fundamentalists, but they also celebrated like the Day of Trumpets.
What was the Day of Trumpets like?
No, so I'm born too late to like experience that bullshit, but born way too early to still be in the kind of religious fundamentalism. Dude, I got all the Christmas, all the Halloween, Easter, the weirdest of the holidays. There wasn't really like any pivotal moment. It was just you're kind of born into it in your formative years when you're 3 years old and just like falling over and whatever. You have this idea of God that has been explained to you. And like fortunately my parents really didn't take me or my brother Jordan to church at all. It wasn't until in middle school that like my parents tried to kind of get us to go to a church, but like pretty tame in that regard.
What was it like growing up in a Christian home for you? Like, did you feel different? Were you embarrassed?
Growing up, I was pretty detached from the like arguments and like standoffishness just because I was fairly young and didn't really understand, but didn't also really form an opinion. I honestly myself started really questioning and coming to terms that I didn't believe in God, at least God depicted in the Bible or the God that most Christians believe in. Probably sixth grade, I started to question like what prayer actually did and what to actually feel during prayer. I rest my head and kind of stare down at the floor and I don't feel anything. And that is actually what kind of catalyzed me not being religious.
Do you have any memory, like as a Christian, like kind of buying into it? Or was it just sort of something that you went along with because this is what our family does?
Oh, definitely the latter. And that is just indoctrination. You're born, your parents kind of tell you, hey, this is what's up, or at least what we think is what's up. They're the ruling authority in your life. We all grow up and we think, dude, my mom and dad are so smart. Can I say swears?
Yeah, you can swear.
Okay. Yeah, my mom and dad are like so fucking smart. Like, dude, of course, like God works like this. Christianity is kind of designed to just externalize shame. So it's like you're kind of tiptoeing in your life of just like, I got to be good or I'm going to be punished in more ways than one. I had a massive blow up with my parents sophomore year of high school. And it was just something where it's like, yeah, no, I don't believe in God, but I'm in this household. So I'll just kind of carry it along to avoid conflict.
After your parents left their cults, like, what is it, Church of God?
Worldwide Church of God, yeah.
Okay, yeah, very creative. What denomination was your parents' church like when you were in high school?
The worst Christmas I ever had, I think we went to church on Christmas Eve, and it wasn't like a bad Christmas, it was just boring as fuck. Dude, no kid wants to be in pews singing the worst music, hearing a story that you've heard like 40 different times from the mouths of like 40 different white dudes. Like, I can't really say what denomination they were. You could turn a verse on its head to defend something you're trying to say in the moment.
Right. I remember us talking about that, like in high school, talking about how if you were to take the Bible literally, it is nonsensical. And yet that's what fundamental is taking the Bible as a rule book for life. There's so much mental gymnastics that you have to do to kind of just live your life, because it doesn't make sense at all.
Right.
So did your parents have any rules that were outside of the norm of secular teenager regular rules, like don't drink and drive?
Wait, is don't drink and drive a religious one?
No, that's the regular rule.
It's just a dickhead thing to do, is to drink and
Yeah,
drive.
don't do it.
I had it pretty relaxed. I think my parents were definitely by that time pretty just kind of tired and overwhelmed with their work. I really didn't have any kind of rules based around our religion or any just weird ostracizing aspects. That honestly didn't really flourish until the middle of high school, when I was a lot more vocal about being an atheist. And that's kind of more when not necessarily rules got brought up, but more just standoffs and fights.
Yeah. How were you most negatively impacted by Christianity?
I definitely find that I have some childhood friends that are kind of became more religious as time went on, and they kind of base their morality and their beliefs and the way they treat people on their interpretation of the Bible, and just kind of some of the things they say and some of the things they do and the way that they actually love people and the way they really hate people is pretty hurtful. Homophobia, transphobia, all that is very deeply rooted in most forms of Christianity. In my personal life, I don't currently communicate with my parents and haven't for a bit now. Religion, like Christianity, can kind of override logic. You know, someone will give you the reason as to why they have a conflict with you, or that they don't want to communicate with you, and you could override that logic with, you know, God is either testing me, or this is what God wants me to do, or, you know, this is an ungodly person I shouldn't even associate with. It's a very effective tool and a lens to look through if you just want to stick your head in the sand, so to speak. You know,
Yeah.
really avoid the legitimate conflict that you have, and then feel righteous about it.
So it sounds like it's negatively impacted a lot of your relationships in your life. Not because you don't want those people in your life, but because of either their actions that they've done because of Christianity, or just that they aren't able to accept you being who you are because of their religion. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, no, it's a really good summation. It's hard to have a relationship with someone where, like, dude, I can't have you around some of my friends. Like, your worldview is almost extermination based.
Do you still have friends who are still religious?
I wouldn't say that I have any close friends that are kind of fundamentalist, because they're quite a bit more vocal. It's a bigger part of their life, and they take their convictions a lot more seriously. I definitely don't want to come off as someone that's like, yo, if you're religious, I want nothing to do with you. It's more, hey, if you're really hateful and loud about this and are totally okay with people incredibly hostile with it, then I don't really want to associate myself with you.
Yeah, that's valid for sure. Do you have any positives about being a Christian? Are you grateful in any way, or do you wish that you were raised in a secular household?
You know, that's a really good question. I don't have any regrets in my childhood, none large enough to write home about. I can't say that there's been any positives. I don't think it was the base of a good basis to learn morality. I have a lot of friends who grew up in secular households. I mean, I have a friend who grew up with two polyamorous lesbian moms, and like her worldviews and her patience and she's lovely. You don't need to grow up in a religious household to have any form of morality. That's total BS. I really can't say that Christianity has benefited me in any way. And certainly through my high school years and early college years, definitely a big bummer. Just the conflict and I don't know, to kind of speak more towards that, it was like, yeah, I went to a religious high school, and I had a couple of friends that were like, we're either just not that religious or we're adamantly not religious. But just, every single teacher you have, every single person you could speak to is just buying into this. And then they will just kind of say some really nasty things to try to justify it. And it was just like, dude, I I can't stomach that. So definitely a negative. I can't really find a positive.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember any of those experiences with teachers where like they were acting very toxic to a child?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
dude, hundreds. My Bible teacher sophomore year, I had gotten into a multitude of fights with. Like, and they weren't like yelling matches. Like I was just a calm kid and I would just, question like, hey, like, how do you make sense of this?
Yeah.
And he would just get flustered and then I became kind of a target with that particular teacher. He would just like take my phone all the time, where it's just like, oh, this kid's not a Christian, so I as a 40-year-old dude am going to bully this 14-year-old. Man, there's a lot of sexism in our school. Bible teacher, just say something about someone who is trying to have a child. I think it was a relative of a student, just like, oh, well, God clearly doesn't want that person to have a child and she should just stop, along those lines. And just using justification, just throwing that shit out there. And that's just said in a class environment. And you're just like, all right, time to do the lesson today. Man, are we going to talk about like altar calls? Because I got big old beef with altar calls.
Yeah, let's talk about altar calls.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've talked about it on the show. I mean, what's your interpretation of an altar call?
Yeah, good question. Well, we had a lot of them at our school. So at our school, we had to go to chapel. It felt like every other day, but it was just once a week. And oftentimes they would have either a teacher speak or a guest speaker come, like a pastor or some kind of religious person come speak. I don't remember any femmes speaking. Do you?
Very rare. Very rare.
Yeah.
There was a couple, but no, it was generally an older white dude.
So altar calls are usually towards the end of the speaker's speech, sermon, whatever you want to call it. They are basically asking the children if they've been moved by what they've said, and if they have been moved, to come down from their seats in the like gymnasium down to the floor in front of all of their peers to either ask Jesus into their heart or rededicate their life to God, or basically like if you feel guilty for anything, like come down to the front and like repent.
Yeah, spot on. It's more disgusting than just like, oh, kids coming down and all their peers watching them. They all start off with someone in like the band playing a song slowly on guitar or piano, typically something in a minor key, to like really draw out like your emotional being and really make you vulnerable and kind of make this almost movie like you're really causing this child to feel like they are in the most important part of their life, because you're setting it up like a stage. You ask them to come out in front of all their peers, although you tell them, oh, everyone close their eyes. No one fucking did. You're externalizing your shame, and it's typically you're being called down to like get right with God and stop doing all the bad things. Like you're admitting to everyone that you're doing bad shit that everyone else is doing, but you want to be viewed in that light, and you want to feel this shame right now, and then you want to be cleansed of that shame. And it didn't have a lasting effect. And so I've never like partook in an altar call, but I just shrunk and just felt so fucking uncomfortable every single time. And I felt so bad for all of my peers that went down during altar calls, because I'm just like, as a child, I was like, this isn't it.
Oh yeah, looking back, I mean, it's totally just complete emotional manipulation. They've got the music playing, they have the same intonation and urgency, and they talk really loud and they bring it down in hushed tones. So you said you started to have doubts in 6th grade. Can you talk a little bit about that? Do you remember what like those specific thoughts were?
So 6th grade, yeah, that's when I went to the school we went to. I had to get a whole new group of friends. My childhood friends that I had grown up with kept on the school track that I would have if I would have just stayed in public school. So, I obviously stayed closely with those peeps. It was a religious school that was entirely new to me. I was actually going to start learning more about the religion that I said I was. By the first half of 6th grade, I was just like, really being around other Christians for the first time in like such a public setting where everyone just talks openly about it and like people let this thing dictate their life a lot more, I kind of just started to come to the conclusion that like, I don't think this is for me. I have prayed so many times during dinner. The comfort that I felt praying during dinner was just I'm around my family. Because that's the wild thing about our school is you would typically start every single class with prayer. Doing that so many times a day, I realized like, dude, I don't feel anything different. I don't feel like I'm talking to anyone. I just feel uncomfortable. I might fall asleep. And so I'm just like, man, prayer really, I think that was the most pivotal concept to me was just like, dude, prayer doesn't feel like anything. I've never heard a voice call back. That was like the first big red flag. Some more auxiliary things would be like being with a bunch of religious adults and hearing what they had to say. My very first Bible teacher, she would quite literally just like, if we're reading about a section of one of the books in the Bible and she comes across a verse that she doesn't agree with, she just says like, oh, but not that. You know, that doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean what you think it is. If you're looking at this book of doctrine as like law, as reality, and you really just kind of go through and pick and choose, it's such a hodgepodge.
It's really interesting that you weren't around other Christians your age until 6th grade. That makes a lot of sense why you would be so shocked or just like confused.
And what's wild is like, actually all my friends growing up, I'm fairly certain at least like 90% of the kids that I hung out with were Christian, and like they would mention God here and there, but man, it was not in that environment where like I never prayed with one of my friends in elementary school. We just injured each other.
So you're telling me you didn't have any prayer circles with the 4th graders?
No.
That was just me? Weird.
That was just you.
Do you have any thoughts on your experience in purity culture?
No. Well, I don't have like any experience. I have thoughts on it. Yeah, dude, my parents were super lax.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember my parents? Yeah. I certainly had friends. I mean, I'm gonna have to be really careful. I know people who absolutely held out until marriage. I don't understand it. If it works for you and like that feeds into your relationship with God and you can find it justifiable, super chill. I personally, and in talking with people and in like having friends who are therapists, it's dicey because there are people who just aren't sexually compatible. With purity culture comes slut shaming. Just any form of shaming. It's telling people that they're sinning, not letting people experience themselves. It pushes aside the idea of like safe and consensual sex. Abstinence doesn't work. It fundamentally doesn't work. It only leads to more dangerous encounters. It just eliminates conversations that you should be having with younger people.
Do you have any memories of friends being slut shamed? Do you have any memories of people kind of being very negatively impacted or positively impacted by the purity culture at the school that we went to? I know that you said that your parents didn't have any kind of specific purity rules, which is true. And also they didn't have any daughters, didn't have any femmes in their family. So that probably added a lot to their very hands-off approach to purity.
I had certainly friends that either were affected by that mentality or belong to that mentality. And I can't speak for those that like were part of the kind of like purity circles, people who were affected negatively, being slut shamed, or just in our school, women being treated like sexual objects and that they have to cover themselves. And it's their responsibility to mandate boys' thoughts and not just have a conversation of, hey, dudes, don't be creepy. Figure it the fuck out. Fuck purity culture.
Well, thank you so much, Justin, for coming on. This has been really awesome. And I've learned some stuff that I did not realize about you and about your just like journey as a kid growing up in a Christian household. Sorry.
With every guest that you have on, is that gonna be like the sign off, like, thank you for talking about your Christianity? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry for you. Love each other. be kind to each other. That's really generic, but that's kind of all there is to it. We could live very egocentric lives and trying to understand other people and where they come from before passing judgment. Loving people wins over anything.
Absolutely. Cool. Let's end it there.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, until next time, everybody, always question everything, because if you don't, then things will always stay the same. And what is the point to life in that?
You're
and
here.
okay, bye.